Hi everyone, welcome to Mike Brooks Now. In this video, I'll be sharing highlights of an interview between Tom Ferry, one of the largest real estate coaches in the world, and Ivy Zelman, a data analyst who focuses on residential real estate. The interview in its entirety is about 45 minutes, only showing the highlights here. This is really applicable for you if you are buying a home or if you're selling your home to trade up or down. If you're one of these people, you will want to listen to this. I want to share this information with you because if you are one of these people, you're likely frustrated by the current market. It's nuts. If a home is priced properly, then you're planning on competing going into multiples. It's almost like if you're not competing so heavily, there's something wrong with the house or it's overpriced. It is just a nuts market. And for many, even low interest rates can't make up for that frustration, leading many people just to drop out, put the pause button for a year or 2 years or whatever they think is going to change in the market. And I thought this video was very helpful because it can help you put some data behind all of this to help make your decisions moving forward. Tom and Ivy touched on a number of subjects, pre-COVID market, current market patterns, migration patterns, and predictions for the housing market. But we're going to really focus on predictions because it's most applicable to your situation. So before we get to the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, the thumbs up button, it will really help me in the YouTube algorithm. I appreciate your support. And here we go. We'll get right into it.
Prior to COVID, we really had very, very tight market conditions, but we had what we like to call a tale of two markets, where we had this unbelievable deficit in entry-level home availability. We saw it on the resale side and new construction, and it was on fire. We had very, very strong first-time move-up, but when we got into the second-time move-up and the luxury in single family, it was languishing and really lackluster is the best way to describe it. And in some markets, we were actually seeing deflation. And that deflation was more prevalent in the condo market in New York City and Miami. And so really that tale of two markets was very much the case. And part of it, my opinion, was that the consumer is overall looking at the potential to make a decision for a discretionary upgrade. And they either felt uncomfortable to leave their existing home because they didn't have enough equity, so they're choosing not to have an upgrade. And they just choose to age in place as they get older.
So that's really interesting. Speaking about the market conditions prior to COVID, many were choosing to age in place and not to trade up. Speaking specifically about the Arizona market, before COVID hit, luxury was moving very slowly. And now in my neighborhood, which is the Arcadia neighborhood, many homes priced above $2 million, $3 million that were sitting on the market for over a year prior just seem to be snapped up very quickly now. It's crazy, and Ivy's going to touch on this right here.
Right. So now we fast forward, okay? The economy shuts down in March. We're all convinced that, there's no question housing is going to go down as much as it might in 1 or 2 quarters, as much as it did at the worst point of the great housing bust. Yep. But then we come out of it. And yet, even during that period, we didn't expect home prices to decline. So if you saw our forecast, Tom, we were still looking back on March 25th when we put out our new housing metrics that home prices would increase 3%. Yep. And we've since now raised that to 5.5%, given that housing is blow away. But yes, what's really changed is that we now have a move-up market that's on fire. So post-COVID, the tale of two markets is no longer the case. And why is that? Why is the move-up market, despite being boxy homes or having, not the latest renovations, they're selling? We have Connecticut homes in Westport and Greenwich that are selling multiple bids, $3 to $5 million homes. It's out there for years. Yep. So that has really been a function of people that are not willing to live in the urban core. It started out New York, obviously, because of people getting the virus and fear of being in a densely populated market, and people recognizing, I don't have to stay in the city. And then they started thinking about, well, I'm working remote today because I have no choice. That's right. Roughly for the listeners, roughly 6 to 7% of households in the United States pre-COVID worked remote. And when you think about what that number could look like 5 years from now, is it a double? Is it a triple? Where is it going to go? A lot of that will depend on employers' willingness to provide consumers flexibility.
So now with COVID, all residential markets are really moving, especially in the suburbs. This is due to increased migration from places like California and New York. No surprise.
No one's traveling. They're not going to sporting events. Yep. They're not going to entertainment. We're not going to concerts. So what do? We start looking at housing. We start to, how do we better our current situation? And by the way, we're no longer stuck because mortgage rates are dropping, that now I can make sense of it, and I can buy, instead of buying a $900,000 house, I can afford $1 million home with the same payment because rates have fallen 100 basis points.
Bingo.
But there's a double-edged sword to that. I'm worried about that. So if you're a broker and if you're listening, you've got to get people to do it today. You've got to get them to trade up today. And I'll tell you why. Because the mortgage market, if the backlash, so we just have so many great mortgage contacts that today the refi market's just booming beyond, as everyone knows, and the purchase market. But what's going to happen is if rates go up, the more every day when they refi someone into a 3% 30-year fixed rate, they're never moving because that rate is not transferable. So we're going to have a very, very immobile housing market. And so your consumers that you're servicing as the broker community, you've got to tell them there's urgency here. And why can rates go up?
And the key though is, and this is, I wanted to talk about this, is that all these people are locking in these ridiculous low interest rates, and then the rates start to tick up and they're like, Steve Harney, who you know, said, tell everybody to buy a house. It doesn't matter what the price is because they're going to brag about their interest rate for 20 years. But Ivy, they may not sell because of that interest rate.
So what she's saying now is that people are focused on bettering their lives, which is great. Anecdotally here, this is why there are higher vacancy rates in Class A apartment buildings. People don't want to be stuck inside, and those that maybe couldn't afford a certain type of home before can now because interest rates are so low. So aside from the fact that, yes, there is low inventory, and yes, it is a very competitive market, it is actually a better time to be a buyer.
So what happens if, quote unquote, we get a vaccine and everything returns to normal and we start to see the unemployment rate and jobless claims are getting better, everything's getting better. What is going to happen is interest rates are going to go up. Interest rates are a function, they're a barometer of what the health of our economy is. As the economy gets healthier, all of a sudden rates start to back up.
Yeah. So pandemic slows, goes away, right? Vaccine, you're saying 2022, if I'm paying attention to the math, right? The years, the economy begins to rebound, rates go back up. I mean, we've seen this cycle before. We haven't seen interest rates at this level, but we've seen this cycle before.
So this is very important to pay attention to. So everyone wants a vaccine. I very much want a vaccine. But as the health of the economy increases, then interest rates are going to go up. So if you're buying a home or selling your home to trade up, well, you might not be able to buy as much home at that point, and for many, may not be able to do it at all. That's why this time is very unique.
Well, I think that you have to look at the combination of a market that is starved. They need to be educated to understand that inventories in the United States are at an all-time record low since the data has been collected. And we've known that for the last few years, but that constraint is not fully appreciated by those that are, homeowners that might not be focused like you and I are on the housing market. So they kind of think they can be patient, they can wait, but home prices are going to continue to rise. So just like mortgage rates are going up, we don't even have mortgage rates going up, but we know home prices are going up. So if you were to look at a quarter point increase in mortgage rates, that's the equivalent to a 3% increase in the monthly payment. So even if rates don't go up, home prices are going to keep going higher and higher. So you need to recognize there's urgency today, otherwise you're going to pay even more, and you have the risk that rates can go higher. So whatever you're waiting for, there's no good reason to wait. It's time to capitalize on a market that you can go and get the most attractive financing ever on record. And if you wait, you're only going to pay more for those homes. I have a house down the street from my house, and I live in Moreland Hills, Ohio. It's in Cleveland in the suburbs. It's a beautiful area. And there was a home probably walking distance, not even 5 minutes from my house. It's on the market for $850,000, which is, a really nice second-time move-up home. And this same friend was like, it's just too expensive. Within a week or two, the house was gone. It had sat there for almost a year and a half, but now it's gone. So she's like, oh, and now she paid $1 million. So, they realized they should have moved faster. So people are hesitant, they're worried, they don't know. But today, it's time to really take advantage of a market that is so, in fact, robust, but it's only going to get more challenging as we go forward. So educate them about the lack of inventory, the fact that you're at record lows, educate them about, home price appreciation is only going to go higher and that rates can only go higher. Regardless of what's happening with the pandemic, home prices are going up. Again, we forecasted a 3% increase as of March 25th. We're now at 5.9%, and we have certain parts of the country that are growing at high single, low double digits today, especially at that entry level price point.
So now if you're a buyer, but sitting on the sidelines waiting for a foreclosure crisis, this part is especially for you.
I hear, interestingly, fear of foreclosures because you're reading and hearing in the media that we're going to have another housing bust. I don't want to buy right now because I don't want to lose all my equity. Right. Yep. So for those listening, let me explain to you, the likelihood of us having a foreclosure crisis again is about 0%, because I'll tell you why. Please. If you think about it, let's just take every person that's currently in forbearance, which is roughly 3.4 million people.
Yep.
And if you look at those people, the majority of them, with the exceptions that might have bought within early part of 2020, have significant equity. Even your FHA borrowers in the last 3 years, their homes have appreciated. So when you think about a mortgage servicer who is now talking to a customer who is not able, unfortunately, they're struggling to buy to make their mortgage payment. So they're now in forbearance. So forbearance is over. Do you think that the mortgage servicer is going to want to take that home back? The answer is no. Ocwen, which is one of the leading loss mitigators, we spoke to them this week. They said they will do anything to keep them in their home. And there's so much equity that rather than them having to lose their home to foreclosure, they can sell that home. And we're desperate for inventory. Yes. So they would sell that home and they would likely help the market because we're in so much need. So we did this analysis. We said, okay, let's assume every borrower actually went to foreclosure all at once, which it's almost impossible for it to happen all at once. Right. That would put the inventory in the United States actually above where it was at the last peak of the housing bust. So that sounds horrible. But think about, Tom, how many foreclosures, how much individual homeowners it takes to get them modified. They're not going to come all at once. No. Even if we took just the FHA and VA borrowers that have lower credit, less equity, that if we added all that inventory to the market all at once, that would put us back to sort of a normal trend line for inventory. So we realize that whether it's investors that are buying for single family rental, whether it's investors that are buying for fix and flip, whether it's the iBuyer that's investing, there's so much investors that are sitting on the sideline dying for these people to go and be foreclosed, and it's not going to happen. Listen, this is an unprecedented time, and guess what, Tom? Interest rates are trumping COVID, and we need to capitalize on it right now before it's too late.
So there you go. She said it right there. Now is the time to buy. We may never see interest rates like this again. So if this video has successfully motivated you in moving forward, buying a home, selling to buy a home, I recommend checking out my video on finding off-market properties. There's a whole nother way to find homes that isn't called Redfin or Zillow. I'll include the link below. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.